So, Ginny, welcome.
Hey, good to be here with
Thanks
you,
so
Emma.
much for agreeing to talk to me. So, I first came across you because we have a friend in common, Megan. And
I can claim her for longer
right,
than
a
you
lot
have.
longer.
We've
Yeah, I
been
know.
friends since I was
Oh my
15.
gosh. So, Megan from Aeroflow Sleep had posted a video about your story on Instagram, and I was like, I want to meet Ginny. I want to know her story for my podcast. So that's how I found out about you. So I thought maybe you could just start by setting the scene of whereabouts in the country you are and like the makeup of your family.
So I'm from just outside of Atlanta. Megan and I grew up in the same small town, went to the same high school, and I moved about half an hour away when I got married. Now I'm closer to Atlanta than I was. And so my current family is my husband, myself, and our two dogs. And I love them to pieces. They're both corgis. We're obsessed.
Got it. So we might get to see them at some point.
You might get to see our
I
oldest
love
one.
it.
He's very devoted.
So tell me about where this whole sleep journey started. Like, when did you first realize that there was something going on with your sleep, or what symptoms showed up in your life that maybe you started to think there might be something going on?
Well, I've always kind of been a snorer, and I wasn't ever really concerned because my uncle snored, my great uncle, my grandfather, just like everyone I knew was, and who was genetically related to me, snored. I was like, oh, okay, that's fine. And I knew I was snoring, and right around the time that I got married, we started to notice that I was sitting up in bed in the middle of the night with my hair over my face, kind of like the girl from The Ring. And it was a little terrifying. And my poor husband slept with earplugs.
Right.
Because my snoring was so bad. He couldn't ignore it.
So I feel as though with snoring, we don't as a society think of that as being a medical or a health problem. We just kind of think that it's a normal thing that lots of people do.
Oh, yeah. I was just like, oh, I snore. Everybody snores. Like, so sorry. Maybe my snoring is just worse than everybody else's, but it's all good. But the real thing came when I was starting it was before the pandemic, so it was sometime in 2019, and I was exhausted every morning. I wasn't driving but like 15 minutes to work, and I was having trouble keeping my eyes open. It's the dead of winter, and I have my windows rolled down for cold air. I'm slapping my face, playing music, trying to stay awake, and it's so hard. And of course, I think like I'm just not getting good sleep. So I go to sleep earlier and earlier. Honestly, at this point, I'm waking up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, falling asleep on the toilet, falling forward, and I had a huge bruise on my head because upright was the only way my body was getting any rest. And so I finally was just like, okay, I've got to talk to a doctor. I'm not sleeping. And they recommended that I go get the sleep test at that point. I was like, okay.
Had you ever heard of anybody having a sleep test? Had you heard of sleep apnea?
My uncle actually is diagnosed, and I knew his snoring was bad enough that they had to sew a little pocket on the back of his sleep shirts for a tennis ball to keep him from being on his back. But aside from that and like the comical versions of it in media, like you think Big Bang Theory and Sheldon and Leonard's horrible CPAP machines, that was about as much as I had heard of it. So I go for this sleep study, and they said, oh, you don't even have to like sleep at our facilities. We'll just send you home with like all these electrodes. And I was like, okay, great. Like, let's get some answers here. And when I went in after that, they had told me, there are the different levels of sleep apnea, the mild, moderate, and severe. And I think the severe tops out at like 30.
Yeah.
I had 101 AHIs per hour.
Right.
I was not functioning at night.
Right.
And it became so apparent that my body wasn't actually getting any rest. I was exhausted because when I should have been sleeping, I was essentially, fighting for my life in the bedroom.
Yes.
And I got my CPAP, and everything changed.
So tell me, when they told you that you were having apneas or hypopneas, like, more than 100 times an hour, what was your reaction?
My initial reaction was, well, that explains why I'm tired.
Yeah.
If I'm not sleeping, I'm surely
And
tired.
what were your feelings around, were you glad to have an answer? Did you feel, I don't know, sometimes people feel all different ways about getting this diagnosis, especially women. I've heard women say, I didn't think I could have this, or...
I think my first reaction was just relief because I wanted to sleep so badly. I wanted some kind of rest. I teach elementary school, and so trying to get up in the morning and be in charge of littles who have more energy than I do, I needed the rest.
So did you go and get in person to get your diagnosis? And then they said, did they just say the treatment for that's a CPAP and explain how that worked a little bit?
They did, and they sent me to a specific place to get my CPAP and learn all about it. And, they sent you home with this fairly large piece of machinery. And, at that point, I had what I refer to as the fighter pilot setup with the whole triangular face mask.
So they did tell you a bit about CPAP and what to expect. And did they fit a lot of different masks to your face or no?
When I went in, they only fit one mask to my face because they said mine was so severe that I had to have the full face mask.
That's so
like there wasn't going to be an option for the nose.
Did you breathe out your nose though?
I think I was just doing everything, and with the number of hypopneas I was having, it was just like, get as much oxygen in this girl as we can.
Got it.
So it took a while to get used to the idea, but it was so relaxing to actually get done.
So did you start sleeping well, like, from the get-go?
Almost immediately. Amazing. It felt like, I think I remember the next day, like, waking up and being like, oh my God, I slept through the night. I didn't, like, sit up and freak out or anything like that. It was like, I just slept. Like, is this how normal people sleep?
That's so nice. I've had a bunch of people on the podcast with the same experience as you, but I've also had a ton of people like me who just like really struggled in the beginning. And so I think it's so nice to hear that you just took to it right away.
I was just so excited. The only thing that really took getting used to was the tubing situation. And when I got switched over to Aeroflow with Megan, that's the one request that I had. I was like, I just want the Teletubby one that comes out the top of my head because I was wrapping the tubing around my neck when I slept.
And so did you change from that full face mask that went over your nose and mouth? Like, so what do you do now?
I've still got a full face mask that sits over my nose and my mouth, but it's more rectangular than a triangle formation.
Yeah. I really want to know is what did your husband say?
When I got diagnosed and I got my machine, he was thrilled. I don't think he expected it to work so well because, like I said, he was wearing earplugs. There was one point when my in-laws were moving and they had to stay with us, and it was before my CPAP. And they heard me snoring, and they're like, that's her?
Because it was live.
Yeah, it was awful.
Oh, gosh.
And my husband was like, yeah, I got earplugs if you want them. He was thrilled, though, and he continues to be thrilled. I worried a little bit at first about, like, I look like a robot going to bed now.
Right.
This is really not cute. And he's like, I don't care because you're quiet.
Yes.
So it made my sleep better. It made his sleep better.
And what did you notice during the day about that really intense sleepiness behind the wheel and how you were feeling? Like, was that pretty quick to get better?
It was. And it was just like my body was starving for that quality sleep that the CPAP gave me. And everything felt better. I can even tell now when my supplies need to be refreshed because I don't sleep as well if the suction on the mask isn't as good. I'm like, I feel like I'm waking up a little bit more. I feel like
originally
I need
you went to a regular durable medical equipment company. Was it an actual building you went to? And then you switched over to Aeroflow. And so how is that different? Like, tell me what the setup was like.
Honestly, it's been night and day. I the first appointment I ever had, they just kind of presented me with everything. They said, here's your CPAP, here's how you turn it on, here's this, this, and this. Go forth and sleep. And I was just so excited to sleep that I didn't really ask any questions. And honestly, it was one of the times when Megan had come into town and she came and stayed at our house and she was looking at my equipment and she's like, I don't like this. I don't like this. So would you like to come to Aeroflow? I told her my one request was that I wanted to get out of the Top Gun fighter pilot setup. And she was able to make it happen, which was amazing.
And I know that it's possible with them to set it up so that they automatically send your replacement parts. So you have that set up?
Yes, I do. It's great. I get an email and a text, and it actually lets me customize. If I felt like I needed less of something or more of another, I can increase or decrease the quantities right there. Mm-hmm. And it's so easy.
I'm really getting interested in, recently there's been a lot of media coverage of some weight loss drugs, and they're talking about like the impact on people with sleep apnea. There's just a lot of different people out that I've talked to for the last 4 years that I've been doing this, where people are finding if they're in a bigger body, they go to a doctor and they end up feeling some shame, or they don't feel like they're treated quite the same as someone else would be. Is that something that you've experienced?
Oh, girl, I got a story for you. So part of this is I've also been diagnosed with PCOS, and I went because I was starting to think about starting a family and wasn't going exactly the way that I had hoped it would.
So for people listening who are not familiar, we're talking about polycystic ovarian syndrome, and it can affect fertility, and there's various symptoms, but I'll let you share the rest of it.
So it was really frustrating because I had confided in a friend who said, let me refer you to my OBGYN. She is fantastic. She helped me. She looked out when I was pregnant and when I had a really difficult delivery. She's amazing. And I went in thinking, this person's amazing. I have a great reference from one of my friends about her. And she looked at me and she said, I can't help you. You need bariatric weight loss surgery. It was not, let's talk about your symptoms. Let's talk about this. It was just an immediate judgment.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. It was horrible. I went home and cried because it's like there were so many other things that you can do before you recommend an expensive and life-altering surgery for somebody. And, you know, I've got a Peloton. I like walking my dogs, do yoga. And I've had other doctors who have said, how can we help you as a person first? And that's been a big thing.
Yeah. I think the media coverage around this weight loss drug that did some studies around sleep apnea, some of the coverage really bothered me just because it was talking about weight being the cause of sleep apnea, when that's not the only factor in sleep apnea at all. Hence why I've interviewed so many people in all different body shapes and sizes. And I think also there's this thing with weight loss drugs now where, I mean, I've certainly had this experience of you know, going to a doctor and them acting as though, why wouldn't you just go on that weight loss drug? Not really, you know, taking time to discuss, considerations. Like, you know, side effects or, you know, my own personal, how I feel about it, you know, and all of that. So, yeah, I think that there's a lot of really shaming stuff around it, which isn't great. So I'm really sorry you had that experience.
And yeah, I know that I was snoring for years.
Yeah.
Like, if you asked anyone, it was like, oh yeah, she snores. Yeah. And even when I was filling out my college dorm applications, it's like, do you snore? Yeah.
And so did you have anything, when you did get your diagnosis, did you have any of that feeling of, why wasn't this picked up earlier? Or not really?
Yes and no. Okay. I felt like I was living on my own. I did a year in the dorms, and, you know, nobody is really paying attention or getting great sleep at a college dorm.
At all.
And then I moved back home so I could work, and I was a commuter to campus. And so there wasn't anybody until I got married that was hearing me sleep.
Yeah.
And I was living on my own in an apartment for a while. So it's just like, there wasn't a way for it to be caught unless there was someone else in the picture.
Yeah.
And I just felt so grateful. I was like, oh, finally, somebody has figured this out and I can sleep. And I talked to Megan about this for a blog that she did too. When I got COVID in 2020, it was a Christmas Day diagnosis, which was just so lovely. I was sleeping all the time and I felt so secure.
Yeah.
Because while COVID, it was before the vaccines were out, it was before we knew a whole lot. But I knew that my CPAP was going to let me get good sleep and keep me breathing. Yeah. It was one less thing to worry about, which was huge.
I talked to so many people who, are kind of in denial. Like, they think they do have some symptoms of sleep apnea. They might snore loudly, or they're just having daytime sleepiness. And deep down, they think they probably do, but they don't want to get tested. They're not sure about CPAP. What would your advice be to them?
It's worth it. Honestly, I was able to do my sleep study in my house, which was so much easier than trying to go and sleep in a lab somewhere.
And that's so much more common now that they're giving people home tests.
It was great. So that made it really easy for me to do that testing. Yeah. It's helped my energy levels. It's helped the quality of sleep that I get. It's benefited my partner. Yes, is it a hassle to unplug it and replug it when you travel? Yeah, but it's also a hassle if you die in your sleep because you're not breathing.
Right.
It's just so worth it. And I am the crazy person who, even if I'm on road trips with my husband, I have my CPAP in close proximity. If I want to take a car nap, I have an AC adapter that I plug in, and I plug in my CPAP in the car. I love that. And I don't sleep in the car without my CPAP.
I don't ever really do car trips where it's long enough to nap. But I know we just had a trip to North Carolina and we decided to come home earlier than we thought. And we ended up kind of driving partway through the night. And I never sleep without my CPAP. But this was one situation where I just we hadn't really thought it through. And I scared my husband so bad because I was just sitting beside him, and every so often I would be like this, and he was just oh,
it's fine, everything's
fine. I'd be like, sorry, and then I'd fall asleep again and do the same thing. So that's awesome that you figured that
Honestly, I've noticed it when I nap. Just if I fall asleep on the couch, I wake up heaving breaths. And I'm trying to get my husband to admit that maybe he wants a CPAP too.
It would be cute.
Oh, exactly.